Friends, I wanted to talk to you about peace today. And when Jeff first brought up the idea of having me preach, for some reason that is just kind of popped in my head immediately. And I'm thinking that probably the main reason is just I'm from Russia, and Russia is who is causing a lot of violence right now. So that's probably reason number one. I'm thinking, if I have to be honest, that's it. But knowing it's Mother's Day, back. There we go. This makes peace a really good topic for Mother's Day celebration. Just want you to take it in. Let it really sink in. But the third reason, probably one of the ones why this topic has been so important in my life, is that way back when I was 17 years old and living in a small town in Russia, and just graduated high school, because we graduated high school earlier, and just getting ready to come to the US, and so excited to leave home and so excited to start life of my own, suddenly realized that where I'm going is a place that was the enemy of my country for many, many years. It would be my first English-speaking country, and I'd be going for 4 years with only opportunity to come see my mom in the summers. I remember weeping on my bed and thinking, what have I done? Because I have my passport and my visa and my ticket. And this was one of those days when Jason has heard the story many times, because I felt like God spoke to me in ways that I maybe only heard a few times in my life. I opened the Bible, and this is the passage that I read. For he himself is our peace, who has made the two groups into one and has destroyed the barrier, the dividing wall of hostility. His purpose was to create in himself one new humanity out of the two, thus making peace, and in one body to reconcile both of them to God through the cross, by which he put to death their hostility. It was such a relief to know that even though I'm going all the way across the ocean, never been to the US, I was going there to be with my family. I know Jeff thought that he finished his series on the cross, but this kind of brings it back to us, right? Where it says that the cross didn't just bring us and God together, but the cross also connected the humans into one. This idea of breaking walls, breaking the dividing walls of hostility, kind of is almost the opposite of the previous slide I showed you. Because the kind of peace that we are able to make and we can afford here in the US is the kind of peace that builds walls. I am so thankful to be able to say to my kids, go to your room and shut the door. My parents were not able to do that because we couldn't afford rooms for each person. We are so thankful in this country to be able to build fences that are taller than our heads so we can block out all the unsightly and uncomfortably loud or whatever neighbors. We are happy to have our little gated neighborhoods. We are happy to have our little Facebook groups and Instagram accounts and our streamlined media that only shows us the people that agree with us, so we don't even have to talk to the people across the barrier. The kind of peace that Jesus talks about here is a very different thing. This is not a go to your room kind of peace. This is the peace where you are, the place here where it talks about joint, it talks about, like, the Greek word is actual joints. That there is a joint between me and you, and it is permanent, and it is there. And there is no wall that can come between us. And if all we do is we put up walls, that is not the peace that God offers us. This is the peace that I want to talk about today. The harder kind of peace, not the peace of leave mom alone in peace. Even though the other one was fun too, and I like it. Okay, consequently, you're no longer foreigners and strangers, but fellow citizens with God's people and also members of his household. This is the family. Friends, today I want to talk about a recipe for peace, but I have to give you two disclaimers. One is that all my sermons are to myself, and this would be a topic that I'm probably one of the least experts on. And on Saturday morning, I had this, I wake up super early, I have this, my coffee, my Bible, and I'm like, dear God, what do you want me to say on Sunday? Please help me. And I had a huge argument with Jason by noon. So God showed me. Sorry, but honey, I love you. So this is not me trying to tell you how to live your life necessarily, but all of us together, coming together and asking this really hard question. How can we come up with a recipe, but a recipe that is not so hard that you so happy to have it, but you're never gonna cook it? You're like, wow, maybe someday I'll have time to make this thing. No, a recipe that can fit on a little recipe card, something that you can carry in your pocket, something that you can do today, tomorrow, this afternoon, the first thing you get to work in the morning. My second disclaimer is just that peace doesn't make any sense without justice. And there is a passage in the Bible, many passages that put the two together, especially Psalm 72, 3-5 is the first one that I found, where it says, let there be peace and justice throughout the land. If only peace mattered to God, we would still have slavery. If only peace mattered to God, there would be many more abusive marriages where one person is riding over the other, and that kind of peace, and the other one is just taking it for the sake of peace. That kind of peace is not the peace of God. This is enabling, and it should not be counted as one. Also, justice without peace leads to bloodshed. Justice without peace is, if all we care about, dehumanizing, steel, black and white justice, we end up in a circle of violence. So justice and peace are these crazy twins that come together and create this kind of very uncomfortable, messy tension that we have to live in. But that is the tension, this creative, meaningful, and uncomfortable place is where God is at work. This is where the Holy Spirit brings out its best fruit. So we are going to look at a kind of obscure passage in the Bible. Some people know this story, but it's not like the one that they usually put in children's Bibles so much. So yeah, I took out some passages too, make it a little shorter, but if you read in the context, it's even less appropriate. But so it's from 1 Samuel 25, and here's what I want to do. I know that you guys have a lot of great things to say, and I deeply believe in kind of this Jewish idea of looking at the Bible passage like a diamond that you turn and each person sees it from a different facet. So I hope that you don't hide from the rest of us what God reveals to you and that you feel free to share. There you go. This is the setting for our story. There was a man in Maon whose property was in Carmel. The man was very rich. He had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats. He was shearing his sheep in Carmel. Friends, the setting is abundance. Carmel means the vineyard of God, rich. So shearing his sheep, that's like a springtime New Year's party for Israel. So a lot of drunkenness, a lot of kind of just celebrating. We made it through the challenging time of the year. New harvest is coming. Let's celebrate what we can afford, how cool we are. But along with that, when biblical scholars look back at that time, they also notice an interesting trend that there's always a setting of old wrongs. The justice pops up around sheep shearing, if you look at all the passages that mention it. And maybe that's kind of like our end of the year, like kind of like let's wrap it up, let's start with a clean slate kind of thing. But that is something that we need to keep in mind. Now, the name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife, Abigail. The woman was clever and beautiful, but the man was surly and mean, and he was a Calebite. Calebite actually means that he's related to David. David heard in the wilderness that Nabal was shearing his sheep, so David sent 10 young men, and David said to the young men,
"Go up to Carmel, go up to Nabal, and greet him in my name. Thus you shall salute him. As such, peace be with you, and peace be in your house. Peace be in all that you have. I hear you have shearers. Now your shepherds have been with us, and we did them no harm, and they missed nothing all the time they were in Carmel. Ask your young men, and they will tell you. Therefore, let my young men find favor in your sight, for we have come on a feast day. Please give whatever you have at hand to your servants and to your son David."
what do you notice in this text? Is there anything that we could distill for our recipe card? Humility. That's great. Yeah, there's a passage, I think, in Corinthians that says, like, don't go with your proud mind. Go with a humble heart if you had to make a decision. What else?
Honesty.
Huh?
Honesty.
Honesty. Honesty.
There's a request for reciprocity.
Yeah.
No harm.
Yeah, we took care of your shepherds in the wild country. So can you do this for us now that you are in your time of abundance?
He's not assuming bad intention. He's
Doesn't-
actually inviting good. He's inviting Nabal to do what's right.
To a relationship, yeah. He's not accusing him or anything. He's just saying, hey, please do this for me. I like that he calls himself the son of Nabal. He's basically saying we are part of the same family. We are one. Your wellness is part of my wellness and the other way around, you know. When David's young men came, they said all this to Nabal in the name of David, and then they waited. But Nabal answered David's servants.
Who is David? Who is the son of Jesse? There are many servants today who are breaking away from their masters. Shall I take my bread, my water, and the meat that I have butchered for my shearers, and give it to men who come from I do not know where?
Any thoughts about this one?
He couldn't be bothered to even ask questions.
Not asking questions, directly jumping to conclusions and labeling, right? You are the riffraff that there's so much of you. Like, I feel like I talked to this guy last week. In the good old days, but now there's all of these wanderers who beg for stuff. It used to be so much better. What else? Cynical.
Cold-heartedness.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like what you said about putting up a wall.
Yeah. I'm over here, you're over there. There's nothing in common. You're none of my business. Kind of similar to like when Cain and Abel, right? Cain says, am I my brother's keeper? This is his life, this is my life. Okay? I like it that he's also like super entitled. I did this, and like a guy who's that rich did not do any of that. He did not butcher anything himself. But he always is like, I did this. Oh, I'm really good at that. I did this too. And yeah, I had a whole list yesterday. All right. So David's young men turned away and came back and told him all this. David said to his men,
Every man strap on his sword.
and every one of them strapped on his sword. David also strapped on his sword, and about 400 men went up after David. Any ideas, thoughts? Anger. Just snap. Like he went from humility to, I'm going to murder everybody within seconds.
It feels like an overreaction.
Overreaction? Yeah, and we don't know. I mean, I remember Karen talking about being hungry makes a big deal. I mean, he's coming to ask for food. Maybe they have been hungry a long time. I mean, it's spring, right? So like, basically like you used up all your supplies, maybe you're hungry or something, and yeah, that would make things harder. What else? Look how he's pulling people into this. Like I feel like when we are out for blood, we love to draw people into it. We go and we talk to somebody here, somebody there, kind of like building up our own confidence. And like these guys, do they want to give their life for this? I don't know. Nobody's asking them. He's saying, you're with me and we're going to go and fight together.
It's two men of power who got their feelings hurt,
Yeah, yeah,
and it's other people who will suffer.
yeah. And that's an interesting piece where he also doesn't ask questions. And he doesn't give second chances. And he doesn't think, well, maybe he was drunk. And maybe he wasn't thinking, and maybe I'll try again. Like, he's like, oh, you were rude to me, so now I'm starting a war. But one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, David sent messengers out of the wilderness to salute our master, and he shouted insults at them. Now, therefore, know this, and consider that what you should do, for evil has been decided against our master and against his house. Exactly what Claire said. Who's going to suffer? Then Abigail hurried and took 200 loaves, 2 skins of wine, 5 sheep ready dressed, 5 measures of parched grain, 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 cakes of figs. She loaded them on donkeys and said to her young men, go on ahead of me.
I am coming after you.
But she did not tell her husband Nabal. Any thoughts about this?
Peace of reconciliation attempt. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
She's not asking or demanding, she's going with the offer.
Yeah? Sorry, somebody.
A level head. She's like, these guys don't know what they're doing. Like, somebody's taking.
Woman of action. Yes. Yeah.
She didn't waste any time.
Didn't waste any time. Yeah. She's not saying, oh, I'm going to fester on this. I'm going to pout for a while, and then I'll think about it. I mean, sometimes you do need to take some time, but sorry.
She's going to be with swords, you know, ready to, this is not just a friendly.
This is courage, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's interesting she didn't tell her husband, so they didn't even talk about it. But,
Interesting.
you know.
But that is sometimes peace actually
Oh,
takes
yeah,
fewer
yeah.
people, right?
Yeah, she knew what needed to be done.
Yeah, you make it a bigger deal. Kind of even in the classroom when I'm teaching, if I make it a bigger deal and involve other people instead of just pulling a kid aside and talking to him quietly, that usually blows it up. Sorry.
She's trying to diffuse the situation.
Diffusing. Mhm. But also it's justice. I mean, she is serving justice. She's not saying, well, what is he overreacting? Like, he won, and what is she's like, there is injustice, and I am going to work to correct it. Okay? This man has protected our shepherds, and even other people are telling her that, and I am going to right the wrongs.
And she's righting the wrong by doing what they had asked. She knows that they're hungry, they need food. That's what she's bringing to them. She recognizes their need and is not just going to reconcile, right? But to to really make justice happen by recognizing what they need and what they had asked for.
Yeah. Yeah, oftentimes we think we know what other people need. And if I just do this for you, or I'm going to do whatever, even like racially that works, right? Where we say, oh, I'll give you this, but you want this, but no, I'm not giving you that, but I'm going to give you this instead, right? I'm going to bring you a gold necklace to wear in the wilderness. He's like, no, I don't want a gold necklace. I want food. Okay.
There's another thing that Nabal didn't talk to her before he went out either.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. And this is what Bill talked about. There's like the defenseless woman and the army against her. As she rode on the donkey and came down under the cover of the mountain, David and his men came down toward her, and she met them.
Now David had said, surely it was in vain that I protected all that this fellow has in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that belonged to him. But he has returned me evil for good. God does so. God to David, and more also, if by morning I leave so much as one male of all who belong to him.
Yeah, this is kind of like a curse. He's like, may God do this to me and this. Okay. Oh, let's go back. What I was thinking about here is just that, I don't know if you've ever heard Desmond Tutu, like the big quote, if you go online, they have that quote everywhere, is that the only way you make peace is by talking to your enemies, not to your friends. And that's oftentimes what we do, right? We go behind and we talk amongst ourselves how awful somebody is, or this other side, how awful they are. And we oftentimes are too afraid to be in this kind of situation where we're vulnerable and we're right in front of people. When Abigail saw David, she hurried and alighted from the donkey and fell before David on her face, bowing to the ground. She fell at his feet and said,
Upon me alone, my Lord, be the guilt. Hear the words of your servant. My Lord, do not take seriously this ill-natured fellow, my husband, the law. But I, your servant, did not see the young men of my Lord, whom you sent. Please forgive the trespass of your servant, for the Lord will certainly make my Lord a sure house, because my Lord is fighting the battles of the Lord.
Okay. Any thoughts?
She sacrificed herself. She offered herself.
Mm-hmm.
He was prophesying there, I think.
Prophesying. Mm-hmm. I also feel like oftentimes I do not want to acknowledge my part in the problem. Okay, her piece in this conflict was very small, but she still acknowledged it. She still said, you know what, I was not there, I didn't hear it, I could have helped, but I'm sorry I wasn't around. And she just started with that, and I just think about like the kind of conflicts we have. We always want to take the righteous kind of, and I want to take the righteous stance of all of that was y'all fault, and I did everything right. But even in this situation, she finds the little thing, and she just starts by apologizing. But sorry I raised my voice. Sorry I did this. Just to kind of, almost like to reestablish this connection. Connection is kind of where we started from the beginning. And so I hope we'll end there again. David said to Abigail,
Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who sent you to meet me today. Blessed be your good sense, and blessed be you, who have kept me today from blood guilt, and from avenging myself by my own hand. Go up to your house in peace. See, I have heeded your voice, and I have granted your petition.
any thoughts?
David seems rather mercurial. I mean, he's, okay, let's be nice, let's go ask. Then he's really raging and angry, and then she meets him, and he's like, oh, feels like he's doing this emotionally.
Up and down. Mm-hmm. Yep. Any other thoughts?
Well, it's certainly a change to the heart.
Mm-hmm.
Really a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and when they talk about repentance, right, this word metanoia, that means you just change your mind. When we go into peacemaking situations, are we willing to change our mind? Or are we going in there wanting to express what we already thought is right? Or are we willing to budge at all?
This was a super tricky place to be a woman. Neither of them would have granted her, like, she would have been considered inconsequential in both of their eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yet in an extremely tricky situation, God was with her, and she managed to diffuse this
Mm-hmm.
huge tension and anger from a role of, someone who would have been seen as what the consequences from work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes we think, oh, this is not my business. I'm not the boss. I'm not the most important person here. But she's like, I know I'm not the most important one, but I can still make a difference here. I can at least try, right? One thing that I noticed here is that when you look at David, David sees God in this situation. And he points to God as the ultimate peacemaker. He's saying, yes, you did what you wanted to do, but God is the one who has redeemed this place. And I think that when we look back to, say, the Beatitudes versus blessed are the peacemakers, I think it's important that we know that this is the work of God. This is the work that we are called to do and we cannot avoid. And this is something that is hard for me because I am the go-to-your-room person too. But when we're looking across the divides, across the walls of hostility that we have built around us within families and within the society, what God is telling us is that those walls are fictional and that we're all connected. I found this really weird statistic that, okay, it's not weird. I want to say it's weird because it sounds really hard. But there was a big study they did in 2020 where they studied conflict between spouses, and they found that people who held hands while fighting did a lot better at keeping peace. I know that when I'm mad, I want to close in on myself, and I want to avoid eye contact, and I want to avoid the vulnerability of touch and the vulnerability of being close together. And actually sometimes when I'm mad enough, I'll slam the door and I'll go out because I want to create that wall. I want a big fat wall because on that side of the wall, I feel strong, I feel righteous, I feel like I'm number one and I'm the only one who's right because nobody else is in sight. Yet when you make this, what she does here is that she makes that clear that we are connected, and I want your man to stay alive. I want my family to stay alive. Let's work this out together. And the way that David, even at the beginning, starts with we are already family. We can work this out together. That is something that's hard, but something that the cross is all about. It's not about going to our rooms. It's about meeting right there in the middle, in the tension between peace and justice, and moving forward together. So what are the ingredients for peace that we heard today? Could we recap a little bit? One thing you want to walk away with, what could it be? Courage. Vulnerability. She did not ask for people with swords to follow her, right? She just came with food. What else?
Humility.
Say it again.
Humility.
Humility.
Awareness.
I think it was Einstein who said that, like, the main ingredient for peace is understanding. Like that kind of asking questions you guys talked about. Are you coming in? with accusations or with questions and wanting to understand the other's point of view. Anything else? Action.
I
Yeah.
think she did what only she could do. Nobody
Mhm.
else in her household could make that kind of a move.
Mm-hmm.
She was set up to take that kind of a risk
Mm-hmm.
that was hers to own.
Totally. Yes. Yes.
And I think it's humility, just admitting that you're wrong. Like,
Yes.
I did this.
That you had even a small part. Yeah, you were, I mean, you're not perfect. There's something that you did that was wrong. That helps reestablish that connection and bring back the vulnerability, kind of like you crack that armor that you created.
Well, having the God of peace in your heart is another.
Yeah. Yeah, to know that God is in that moment. I mean, if she would not have achieved her goal, she still was doing God's work. She was trying, she was working in there. I mean, God is a God of process, not product, like we sometimes are, right?
You know, I think selflessness too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, she's got big consequences to face here, and she set that aside and did it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
She wasn't, it feels like this solo heroic action, but she wasn't alone either. She was tipped off. She had this ally, this young man that's described that came and said, and she had earned the trust of this young man to be the kind of person that he could take this.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as much as it feels like a solo heroism, there's allies in it too.
Yes. Yes. But she didn't pull in people who would just be like saying, yeah, you're right, but the whole time, right? But she did work with somebody. Yeah, that's true. Yes.
Being kind to people even when the people close to you aren't.
Being kind to people. Yeah, just because your closest people destroy someone. I'm in this situation at work this year, is where I'm working with somebody who vehemently hates somebody and constantly talks about them, but they're above me, so I don't feel right now that I can necessarily like stop them from saying things, but I feel like I can at least be kind to this person. Just because someone above me is not, that doesn't mean that I go follow their steps. Yes?
Just keep thinking about connection
Yeah.
between people and relationship.
Yes.
And how conflict like this and disagreement, it should all come back down to connection
Of course.
and relationship.
Thank you.
With someone and with others.
Thank you, CJ. CJ is a perfect, that's a perfect phrase to go into this.
When I look into the face of my enemy, I see my brother. I see my brother. When I look into the face of my enemy, I see my brother. I see my brother. When I look into the face of my enemy, I see my brother. I see my brother. When I look into the face of my enemy, I see my brother. I see my brother. Forgiveness is the garment of our courage, the power to make the peace we long to know. Open up our eyes to see the wounds that bind into the face of my enemy, I see my brother. When I look into the face of my enemy, I see my brother. I see that when I look into the face, I see now. I see now. I see my brother. I see my sister. I see my father. I see my when I look into the face of my enemy, I see my brother. I see my brother.
Let's pray. Dear God, you have blessed us with a call to be peacemakers. I pray, Lord, that you would inspire us to go forth and in the face of our enemy, see our brother. Amen.